Happy Monday, y'all. That music's kind of mesmerizing. It started to put me to sleep a little bit. I had to wake up a little bit. My name's Aaron. If you guys don't know me, I'm one of the pastors here at Movement, and I get the privilege of leading our Next Gen team, which is our kids and student ministries. And like Elisa said, they are at camp having a ball, and I was just there and about lost my voice, so hopefully I'll make it through this today. But one of the things we are doing, many of you have commented on how beautiful my bracelet is, and you too can have one of these, and it's not just for fashion. It's for actually for praying for our students and kids that are going to be at camp and CIY this summer. And so if you would be willing to take a moment each day and pray for our kids and students, we have one of those in the back. We'd love to give you one just as a reminder of just what God can do this summer through our kids and students, and just all the incredible things that are going to happen as they encounter Jesus. And speaking of students, we have a group of students here from Rhode Island at Bridgepoint, and we're excited they're here with us. How awesome is it that they are taking a week of their summer to go and serve others? That's pretty awesome. That's actually kind of what we're talking about today, so it's going to be awesome. So we're glad you guys are here as well. We're in a series called We Love New England. Who loves New England in here? All right, good. I love New England as well. I'm not a true New England. I've been here for 5 years. I don't know at what point you become like a true New Englander.
When you embrace the Patriots, the Red Sox, the Celtics, and the Bruins.
Then I'm there, you know, so there you go. So I think I'm getting there, though, because I'm like seeing these signs that I'm becoming a New Englander. Like I started using my car horn a lot more. You know, I didn't do that in Oklahoma now. I just honk at everybody, you know. And I wait to the very last minute to merge in on the highway. And that's really fun, and I love that now. It's like a challenge. It's like a game. It's like 80 degrees outside today, and I'm like, it's so hot outside. You know, and in Oklahoma it was always 100, and I'm just becoming a wimp to the heat. You know, and I think, the other day, too, I went to go and I was going to say, like, this is awesome. And I was like, this is wicked awesome. And I was like, where did that come from? Like, it just, like, slipped out. So, like, I think I'm becoming a New Englander. But like you said, I think New England has so much to offer that we have to embrace. We have 4 seasons that are just so beautiful. And like she said, there's 4 seasons. There's Red Sox season. There's Patriots season, right? We just finished up the Bruins season. And I'm embracing that. And Josh and Mark, they moved here a couple years after me. And so they're getting there. They're starting to embrace some of the seasons. Mark is from St. Louis. I don't know if you know this, and so he was actually rooting for the Blues for the Stanley Cup, which you can imagine my surprise then when we're eating dinner the other night, and I walk in, and Mark is actually wearing the shirt. We're going to have a picture. I had to take pictorial evidence. Mark was wearing a Bruins shirt, so he is becoming a New Englander as well. We love you, Mark, and we love New England, right? And so one of the things that I remember first about New England when I first moved here 5 years ago was this place called Market Basket. And, you know, I've been in, obviously we have grocery stores in the Midwest where I grew up, but we didn't have Market Basket. We had like Kroger, we had like Reese's, we even had this place called Piggly Wiggly, which is like, that's just fun to say. Everybody say that with me. Piggly Wiggly. Like, you can't just like not say that. It's fun. And they had this little pig logo. It was awesome. But we didn't have Market Basket, okay? But my first experience with Market Basket was when everybody was standing out on the street corner. They weren't actually in the store. So like when I first came to New England, I'm driving by the store, and I just see all these people marching around holding up signs. And I'm like, what is going on? And like I get closer, and I see they're protesting. And obviously, like I've seen workers go on strike before. And, you know, usually when you see people go on strike, they're holding up signs like, we want better pay, we want better benefits. But that's not what was on their signs. They were holding up these signs that said, we love RDT. Bring back RDT. And I'm like, who is RDT? Like, what is going on? Like, I didn't know if somebody got fired wrong. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't even know Market Basket was a chain. I just thought this was like one store. And then I come to realize this is like a New England thing, right? It's like 70-something stores, and that this wasn't just a few people on a street corner. This was like hundreds of employees that just like quit their jobs or like stopped working and almost shut this company down, all because they loved their boss. They loved their CEO, and he was wrongly fired, and they wanted him back. And so they lost like millions of dollars until they finally did what these people wanted, because they saw this need, this injustice that was done in this company, and they decided they were going to do something about it. And so they stood up. And that's when I realized something really important about New Englanders. They will go to some crazy extremes for the people and things they are passionate about. And I was like, this is an awesome place to live, right? And I was thinking about that because as we end this series, We Love New England, the topic that was assigned to me is this idea that like love meets needs. And when you look at the life and the ministry of Jesus over the few years that he was on this earth, he was constantly meeting needs. He was going around and he was seeing people and he was meeting their needs. He was meeting their physical needs. He was meeting their emotional needs. And it was just this awesome idea. And I've been thinking about this idea of love meets needs because there's this tension in this idea of love meeting needs. And the tension comes in where we can't meet all the needs. And we want to meet all the needs, right? We want to be the one that does it, and we can't do it all. I don't know if you felt this. Like it's like a little bit too much. There's too much need in the world. Like, I don't know about you, but like I was going shopping a couple days ago, and I went to a couple different stores, and like every store does this now. Do you want to round up your purchase and donate to this? Do you want to add $1 and donate to this? And then you walk out of Walmart, and there's kids with coffee cans asking for money, and there's just like all these needs out there. And you've got, in Manchester, we have this opioid crisis. It's just like this huge, huge thing. We've got kids in foster care across the U.S. that just is like an overwhelming need. There's homeless people. There's people with mental illness. There's natural disasters. There's people that still don't have clean water. There's hungry kids in Africa and disease. And there's cancer and cancer research. And there's single parents. And then the worst is when you're just flipping commercials and you see that commercial for the little dogs and Sarah McLachlan singing Angels. And you just start crying and you just can't handle it, right? Because there's like all these needs. And it can be overwhelming, and the magnitude, the danger in that is like it can stop us from doing anything because we're like, I don't know where to start. Like, where do I start? Because there's so many needs, and I think the thing that we have to think about is like we start by just not letting it overwhelm us. Because here's the thing, if we get overwhelmed by everything, often we don't do anything. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this. Maybe you had a lot to do. You had a really busy week. And you had a huge to-do list, and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to do this all. So you sit on the couch, and 8 hours later, you've binge-watched a Netflix series, right? I don't know about you, but I've done that. Or I'm like, I got so much to do that I can't do all this stuff, so I'm going to take a nap. Like, and so you just like get overwhelmed, and you just shut down, or you divert your attention elsewhere. You just don't want to think about it because you're like, I got all this stuff I got to do, but I don't have time. I can't do it all, so I'm just not going to do any of it. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but I think that happens the same when we think about this idea of love meeting needs. And even though we know we want to meet needs, and there's a lot of needs out there, and we love people, like we get preoccupied with other things, or sometimes we're preoccupied with our own needs so much that we don't even see those needs around us. Or worse yet, we see the need, and we just start to make excuses about why we shouldn't be the one that has to meet that need. The big one is we just like, I don't have enough to meet that need. Like maybe I don't have enough time to meet that need. You know, I'm so busy, my schedule, so I'm a busy, very important, busy person. I don't have time to meet that need. I don't have time to volunteer. I don't have time to serve that person because I'm so busy. I don't have enough resources to meet that need because, you know, if I just had a little bit more, then I could give more. If I had a little bit more, then I could give towards that. But right now I'm kind of strapped, so I can't do that because I don't have enough resources to meet that need. Or sometimes it's I don't have enough skill to meet that need. Like they need somebody that knows more about that than me. They need somebody that has more experience dealing with that situation than me. And so we start to rationalize away why we shouldn't be the one that has to do that need. Sometimes we're just more point blank because like you said, if you're in New England, you're just kind of like a little more straightforward maybe. That's a nice way of putting it. So you maybe just say, it's not my job to meet that need. Somebody else will do it. It's not my job. Or worse yet, sometimes we just look at it and we say, you know, someone else will take care of that, or even, you know, God will take care of that person. And that's not a bad thing to say because God does say he'll take care of us, but oftentimes he uses each of us to help take care of each other. And love meets needs, so we can't just rationalize it away. And Jesus, like I said, he modeled this in his ministry. He showed us what it looked like. And I think a really good example of it that we're going to kind of camp out in today is found in John chapter 6, if you want to open up your Bibles or YouVersion apps to that. We're going to be in John chapter 6. It's this miracle he does where he meets the need of a crowd. And it's the only miracle Jesus does that's actually recorded in all 4 gospel accounts in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So it's a pretty significant event because it's the only one that's miraculous that is recorded all 4 times. So we're going to read this together. It's in John chapter 6, starting in verse 1. We'll go through 15. This is what it says. Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is, the Sea of Tiberias, and a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside, and he sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. And when Jesus looked up and he saw a great crowd coming towards him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy food or bread for all these people to eat?" And he asked him only to test him, because he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, "It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to just have a bite." Another translation actually says 200 days' wages. Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up and said, "Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish, but how far will this go among so many?" And Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." And there was plenty of grass in that place, and so they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. And Jesus took the loaves, he gave thanks, and he distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. And he did the same with the fish. When they had had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather up all the pieces that are left over, let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them up, and they filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. And the people saw the sign Jesus performed, and they began to say, "Surely this is the prophet who has come into the world." And Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to the mountain by himself. Now, many of you probably heard this story. Jesus miraculously feeds these 5,000 people. And the thing that I was thinking about as I kind of read through some commentaries on this and was just kind of wrestling with this story and what we can take away from it is that I love how the Bible doesn't always give us all the details. You know, we got like some of it's just left up to our imagination. Like the thing that I've always kind of just assumed is like, you know, Jesus like had a loaf of bread, he like kind of cracks it open, you know, boom, it like becomes 2, you know, 3 becomes 4, 4 becomes 5. But we don't really know like how he multiplied it necessarily. And I was reading this William Barclay commentary on this, and he said he kind of suggested a few different ideas on that. He's like, yeah, it could have happened that way. Like he just started handing it out, and there just miraculously became more and more as it kind of went through the crowds. Another thing he said was, what if like what he said earlier in the text? He said we could only get one bite to everybody. Like what if you just put a little bite in everybody's hand, and like that one little bite was like so filling. Like I don't know if you ever saw like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when they had the 3-course meal gum. Right? And she put it in her mouth, and she had like all 3 courses in one little piece. I mean, she turned into a giant blueberry and almost died. I don't think that happened. But what if it was something like that, where like this one little piece was so filling? And in the commentary, he's like, that would be so cool, because it would be like this symbolism of like communion. And like each week, how we just have like one little bite, and like we're reminded of just like the greatness of God and how he fills us up. And I was like, man, that's good. Never thought about that. And then he said, here's another thing that could have happened, because he said, if all these people were going to this Passover festival, it was about a 9-mile journey. And he said, what if, like, what are the chances, basically, that all of these people were going on this trip and had no food on them? I started thinking about it. I was like, how many of you guys, when you go to the beach or you go to the mountains, don't take some snacks, right? We all pack some snacks, right? We put them in the back of the truck. We got the little snack bag, right? Because the kids are going to get hungry, and they're going to start crying. They're going to start complaining, and we don't want to spend the money to buy the good stuff when we get to the beach, right? So, like, we have to pack some snacks, right? And he said, so what are the chances that all these people didn't have any food on them? Probably pretty slim to none. And he said, what if that when Jesus took this bread and he gave thanks and he started to share, and like in the very presence of Jesus, like that people that were once greedy like started to share. And in this crowd, it like just sparked this wave of generosity where people that were just like clinging on to what was theirs, or maybe weren't willing because they were still part of the journey to go, like started to get out their food, and everybody started sharing. He's like, what if the greater miracle was not that like fish and loaves were changed, but that like hearts were changed, and that people were selfish turned into sharers? And I was like, man, that's good too, right? And it's like, but the thing is, we don't know. Like, it could have been a combination of all of this, right? It could have been multiple different ways, but what we do know from the text is that once the meal was done, there was more left over than what was started with. And it was miraculously, this thing happened, and everybody's need for sustenance was met. And I think there's some things, though, that we can take away from this that are really, really key. And the first one is that they didn't let the need overwhelm them. Because this crowd was a big crowd. Like, this was 5,000 men. It says that by estimation with women and children, they think it's probably about 20,000 people in this crowd. And I love that Jesus used this moment to teach his disciples all a lesson. He used it to teach us a lesson. Because it says in the text, like, he had in mind to do this all along. Like he had a plan from the very beginning of what was going to happen. He knew what he was going to do, but he invited his disciples to be a part of the process. He wanted to see how they would respond when they were presented with this need, with this overwhelming need. Like, how are we going to feed all these people? Like, what will you do? And so he had a plan, but he empowered other people to be a part of the plan because that's what Jesus does. He wants us to participate in the story that he's writing. He wants us to be a part of it. And that's pretty awesome because that means that you and I get to do something with Jesus. And he could have just said, like, hey, dinner's ready, everybody, and poof, and all this food was there. But he didn't do that. He's like, hey, guys, how are we going to get food for all these people? And we see that there's very different responses from different disciples about how they should go about doing this. First of all, we have Philip, right? And Philip is obviously a numbers guy. Because Philip eventually, if I was like, there, I feel like he would just have his calculator out and he's like doing calculations like, okay, we got this many people times this many things. We got around the 3, like, hey, Jesus, this is going to take a lot of money, okay? Jesus, there's no way we could do this. It would take 200 days' wages for everybody to just have one little bite. This is not something we're going to be able to do, Jesus. And actually, I added this up today with American wages, 200 days' wages. That would be about $37,000 for this meal. It's a pretty big meal, right? And that's not counting gluten-free bread because we know that stuff's expensive, right? So it would probably be much more than that. So big ticket meal here. And Philip, here's what he does. He just points out the problem. He's like, hey, that's a lot of food, Jesus. We can't do that. We don't have the resources to do that, Jesus. We can't really make that happen, Jesus. He just points out the problems, doesn't offer any solutions, just say, like, this is too much. But then we're told there's Andrew. And Andrew sees the need. He knows it's great, but at least he offers up some sort of a solution, right? And it's a terrible solution. Like, if you're there, you're like, Andrew, this is terrible. This is not going to work. Like, all you do is you got this kid over here with a Happy Meal. Like, you think this is going to solve the problem? Like, no, this isn't enough. But Andrew at least sees, and he's like, hey, he has this mindset that I think is just so beautiful that's like, hey, we can't help everybody, Jesus, but maybe we could feed a few of them. Maybe we could feed a couple of people, Jesus. And so he brings this meal to him, and he realized that, if you can't help everybody, at least we can help somebody. And I think he understood this next thing that I think we can learn from this story, which is that we have to use what God has given us. And the beauty of how Jesus lets us play a part in the story is that we get to use the gifts and the blessing that he's given us. Like, we get to bring to the table what only we can bring to the table. And we can reach and impact people that only, we can reach and impact. But we have to actually use what he's given us. And I don't think Andrew, went over and stole this kid's meal, right? I think this kid actually willingly gave it to him, which means that this kid was willing to play a part and use what he had and give it over. And something incredible happens, I think, in the midst of this. It's really often overlooked in the story. Is this meal's given, and then it says just very simply, Jesus gave thanks. And that's pretty awesome if you think about this. If you think about the magnitude of this, that Jesus takes a moment to just stop and give thanks for what was just given. Even though it was small, even though it was definitely not sufficient to meet the need that he threw out, he stops and he gives thanks. Because so many times I think for us, we've been given gifts by God, and we look at them and we say, this is just a little gift that he's given me or blessed me with, and we think that it's not, it's just so small that we stop to actually thank him for what he's just given us. But Jesus, who is actually God himself in nature, the creator of everything, he is the sustainer of everything, he owns it all anyway, took a moment to stop and give thanks for this little bitty piece of meal. And so many of us think that when we can't give big, we can't give a lot, that that we're not able to participate because of that. It's got to be big. And this story proves that that's anything could be further than the truth. Every little gift that we give in love counts. And Jesus sees it, and he's thankful. And he will do more with it than we could ever imagine if we just trust him with it. And that's kind of the next thing I think we learn from this is we have to trust that God can do more than we think he can, that God is always, always, always bigger than we think he is. And we have to realize that if we take that gift and we put it in his hands, no matter how small it is, it's pretty incredible to watch what he does next. And he wants it, and he wants us, just to give it over to him and let him take care of the rest. And we had the beauty of that is we get to then play a part in this story, and we have no idea how he's going to use it. And it could start with just the smallest of things, because the smallest of things can turn into big things, and generosity is a very contagious thing. It could start with just buying someone a cup of coffee or a meal. I don't know if you get on Google much, but I did a fun Google search this week just called Pay It Forward Streaks. And it's fun to see how many times like someone will buy someone a cup of coffee or a meal, and it turns into hundreds, if not thousands of transactions. Some of them that if you looked up have lasted like days long, where people just kept paying it forward and kept paying it forward and kept being generous at Chick-fil-A's and at McDonald's and at Starbucks and all these different places, just because someone decided they were going to be generous. Then hundreds of people decided they were going to be generous. It starts with a small thing, and with Jesus, there is always, always more than enough. And the other beautiful thing I think about this story is that Jesus wasn't wasteful. He actually told them after they gathered this up, he's like, hey, let nothing be wasted. And even though this bread was provided miraculously, even though Jesus could have made a whole bunch more, right? He didn't take that for granted. He was thankful for it. He didn't waste it. He said, hey, gather it up. We'll use that later. And that's the other thing, that we don't know what happened with that bread of the 12 baskets, but I'm guarantee you it was put to use, unlike the leftovers that are probably sitting in your fridge for 2 weeks, right? Like he took it, and I guarantee you he put it to use. And so I've been thinking about this idea, and I love that commentary about just the different ideas. And there was a quote in that commentary by William Barclay that just kind of kicked me in the teeth. And I just want to share it with you because I think it kind of helps us wrestle with this idea of what can we do. And he said this. He said, is it our prayer, Lord, give me the strength to do what I can? Or is it in reality, is it really, Lord, give me the strength to do what I want to do? And I don't know about for you, but for me, if I'm being honest, most of the time when I'm praying, it's probably the latter. It's give me the strength to do what I want to do, not what I can do. And I think if we're going to be like Jesus, if we're going to really use that love and meet needs, like we have to just start with what we have and do what we can do and just trust him that he's going to do something really incredible with it. And we have some leaders at Movement that did just that. They saw this need that was overwhelming. They couldn't meet it all. They couldn't do everything, but they just decided they were going to do what they could. And so they started this thing called the Pass Along Project. And so we're going to check this video out to see what they're doing and how God's using it.
My name is Katie John. I've been with Movement for a year and a half, and with the Pass Along Project, my title is Volunteer Coordinator for the Nashville Merrimack area.
My name is Kimberly Kelly. I've been at Movement for about 2 years, and my title is the Nashville Merrimack Area Donations Coordinator.
So the Pass Along Project exists to help foster families. At the moment, they bring foster children into their home. Often the children come with nothing. The stereotypical trash bag of stuff is not the case. They don't come with anything or anything usable. So the Pass Along Project was started by a foster mother who saw this as a huge problem, and she started the program to come alongside foster families and bring them everything that a child would need to wear the first week that they're in the home.
In a bundle, it's about a week's worth of clothes. Think about going to camp. So you get a little bit of everything: pants, shorts, t-shirts, long sleeve shirts.
I got involved because while I was not a foster parent, I am an adoptive mother. And when we brought our teenage son home, he came to us with literally nothing. So we went through a really hard time financially. And I always thought to myself, you know, the church is really supposed to wrap around these families and support them. And that did not happen for me. And I thought, if I ever get to the other side of this, I really want to do that for other families. I went to the Foster Care Festival last year, and I went to an information night, and someone just handed me a Pass Along Project flyer. Didn't really talk much about it, but I looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it.
I've always been passionate about the foster care community, but I'm not in a place in my life where I'm able to be a foster parent, though I hope one day that will be a reality. So I really wanted to be involved, but I didn't know how. And when Katie became involved and did her first drive, I met her there, and we just clicked immediately, and I loved what the program was all about. And I asked her, I said, how can I help? Our specific need that we fill is clothing. We want to meet that specific need, and we've really focused on that. When we deliver to families or hear about foster families in need, a lot of times the need is greater than that. So I can recall going to a foster family's house who had just taken in twins. And so I dropped off the clothes to them, talked with the parent a little bit, and found out that they were in need of a high chair also. I was able to coordinate with other organizations to be able to fill that need for that foster family. So we were able to also get her a high chair through, honestly, through people with the Love 603, and they were able to fill the need.
I delivered a bundle to a foster mom, and it was for a baby, and a few weeks later she brought in a teenage boy. But I asked her, what do you need? And she said, well, this is so different, and I just need something for him to do. And I said, what about a basketball hoop? And she said, oh my gosh, are you for real? And I said, sure. We got the movement truck. Everybody brought it over to her, and she was like, are you guys for real? I can't even believe this. And so that kind of brought a whole bunch of movement people, not just myself, around this woman to love on her and just, show her that she was important enough to stop what we were doing and take care of her needs. It allows us to meet not only physical needs, but spiritual and emotional needs as well.
I think it's just important to have your eyes open and to be looking at ways that you can help people, whether it's tangibly or emotionally or anything from their hands are full with items, so you can help them to their car, or the example with the high chair. I wasn't able to actually help them, but I reached out to other people and said, hey, can anybody help? And someone was able to help through me to this other person. So reaching out to other people who might have resources to help. Also just being that ear. Maybe they just need a friend or someone to hang out with. I think we always go right to oh, let me buy you something, and sometimes that's not always the answer. Sometimes it's just to be there for someone. So
people can get involved by just reaching out to us. We have lots of needs. We've been doing it kind of ourselves for a year. As we grow, we need more people to take on this job or this job or this job. It's so many different needs. I mean, we will plug you in. You can partner with us by liking our Pass Along Project page on Facebook and following along. We're always posting needs and posting what's going on, so you can get involved. Or you can contact us at NashuaNH passalong@gmail.com.
In Proverbs chapter 14, verse 21, it says this. It says, it's criminal to ignore a neighbor in need, but compassion for the poor, what a blessing. And let me tell you, there is no greater blessing than when you see that need and you use what you have and you get to see the fruit of what God does through it. It's been so incredible to watch the Pass Along Project and just see this mountains of clothes come in and all the families that have been impacted by it. And this, it's such a big problem, but this small little solution is making such a big difference. And when you look at the foster care kind of thing that's going on in America, it can be very overwhelming, and we can't necessarily meet all the needs, but we can start somewhere, and this has been incredible. And they're just using what they've been given and making a big difference. And the question, though, I think that many of us might wrestle with this idea of meeting needs is the big question that we ask a lot of times, which is why? Why should I meet someone else's need? Well, I got enough problems of my own. Like, why should I help them? Like, I'm the one that needs help. And And the very simple answer is that Jesus met your needs. He met my needs. And he met the greatest need that each and every one of us has ever had, which is the need for a Savior. And just like this story where he feeds these 5,000 people and he saw them and he knew that he had a plan of what he was going to do when he saw this world and how we had sinned and we had broken that and fractured relationship with Jesus, like he had a plan for that too. And so he came and he gave what only he could give, which was himself. And just like in this story, there was more than enough left over at the end just when he came to eradicate our sin problem and take care of the sin and the shame that we brought upon ourselves. Like there was more than enough grace as well. With Jesus, there's always more than enough. And so many of us think that like we've done something so bad or so big that like he can't handle it. And it's overwhelmed us with the size of what we've done. But let me tell you, Jesus, there's always more than enough. He just keeps giving, and that's what's so amazing about his grace is that it knows no limits. It keeps doling out grace for everything we've ever done, everything we're going to do, and there's still 12 baskets left over that probably aren't even going to get touched because he loves you so, so very much. And it's because of his love for you and for me that we turn and we face the hurting and broken world around us, and we start to meet their needs, and we love them the way that he loves us because love meets needs. And so as we kind of wrap up our time together tonight, I just want you to think about this question is, what is the need that God has put on your heart? What is the need that God has put on your heart? Because I think for a lot of us, he's put one on it. And if you don't think of something right away, that's why we ask you every week to pray this prayer at 603, God, move me closer to someone that needs to move closer to you, because when you pray that prayer, God's going to put somebody in your path. He's going to put a need in your path, and it's going to get put on your heart. So if you haven't been doing that, maybe that's your first step tonight, is that you just set that alarm at 603, and we pray and love on the 603, like so many of you are already doing. But for many of us, I think we know what that is. Like God has burdened our hearts with something that and we know it. We know what we're supposed to do. We know what the problem is that's kind of weighed on us. We know that the need is that he's kind of given us something that we can put towards, but maybe we just haven't trusted him and put it in his hands, or maybe we just haven't used what he's given us. Maybe we've rationalized it away. Maybe we've kind of pushed it down and we've made excuses about why not now, why not me. But he's put that thing in you that you know you're supposed to step up and meet that need. And so for you, my prayer would be this week that you would step up and you would do something about that. Or maybe for you, it's the first time you finally realize like that Jesus actually met your need for forgiveness, and you want to start a journey with him of what it looks like to follow after him and to experience the love and forgiveness that he offers you. And if that's you, for you, we'd love to stay after. We'll be leaders up here. We'd love to pray with you and just to hear your story and help you on your journey to follow Jesus. But whatever your journey is, we just pray as we leave this place that we would go and we would meet some needs. So would you stand up with me and let's pray together. God, we thank you for your word. We thank you for how it teaches us and inspires us to do so much, and just the love that just comes pouring out of the pages of Scripture of how you've loved us so well and so many others. And God, as we leave this place tonight, we just pray that you would open our eyes to the needs of those around us that are hurting and broken, and how we can play a part in your story of redeeming that. God, we pray that we would be more like Andrew and not just point out the problem, but actually do something about it, no matter how ridiculous or small the solution we come up with is. God, that we would just trust that you could do more with it than we could ever imagine, and that we would step out in faith. We'd put it in your hands and just step back and see what you do. So this week we just pray that we would get to experience your love and pass that along to someone else, and that you would just move us closer to other people that need to move closer to you. And we pray all these things in the only name that has power, the name of your son, Jesus.